Okay, welcome back. For this topic, we'll dive straight in with a hands-on. We'll explore one of the more powerful data governance features in Snowflake, data lineage. In a general sense, data lineage is the process of tracking the flow of data in a system as it goes from object to object. This is so you can have a bird's eye view of where data originated and where it ended up. This will become much clearer once we take a look at the visualization in Snowsight. So we'll start by opening up our SQL script entitled D1 Data Lineage and get our environment set up. The first block creates our database and schema. Nothing new here, this is just the namespace we'll be working in for this lesson. So what we have below that are 3 create table statements using the create table as select construct, together forming a simple data pipeline. The first table, raw orders, is our starting point. It's 1,000 rows of synthetic order data, things like order ID, customer ID, order date, amount, etc. We've deliberately introduced some messiness into our raw orders, like null values and white spaces in the customer names. This is because our second table, cleaned orders, reads from raw orders and tidies things up. We'll execute these as we go. And our third and final table in our mini data pipeline is orders summary. This aggregates from cleaned orders. For each customer, we're computing things like their total number of orders, total order value, and much more. And finally, we do a quick check to see that the tables have been populated correctly. Right, now that's done, we can head over to the Database Explorer. This can be found in the Horizon Catalog section and then Database Explorer. Open up the Lineage Demo database, then Transform Schema, and click on the Raw Orders table. You'll see several tabs at the top. On the far right, click the Lineage tab. And there it is. What you're looking at is a visual graph of how data flows through your pipeline. Each box, or node, represents a Snowflake object. In this case, Raw Orders is in the center, and you can see Clean Orders sitting downstream of it to the right. The arrow connecting them tells you the direction of the data movement. Data flowed from raw orders into clean orders. You'll also notice there's an arrow button on the right side of clean orders. Click that to expand the graph and reveal the next step downstream. Order summary appears. So now you can see the full pipeline in one view, raw orders to clean orders to orders summary. In Lineage, we talk about upstream and downstream. This source of the data is said to be upstream and the destination is said to be downstream. So we can say that raw orders is upstream of cleaned orders, and vice versa, clean orders is downstream of raw orders. Whether something is upstream or downstream always depends on where you're standing in the graph. Now, let's click on Clean Orders in the graph. A side panel opens up on the right. Here you can see a summary of the object, its columns, any tags on those columns, and some basic metadata. This is useful for a quick reference without having to leave the Lineage view. Okay, let's close that down, and for now, we'll click the arrow, the connector line between raw orders and cleaned orders. This is where it gets really useful. Snowflake shows you the SQL statement that created the downstream object. With that, you can see exactly how cleaned orders was built right there in the Lineage graph without having to go hunting through the query history. This can be a really big time saver when you're troubleshooting a pipeline. This is an example of object-level lineage, but Snowflake goes a level deeper. You can also trace individual columns. By clicking on the Cleaned Orders node, I expanded the column view. Let's do the same for Orders Summary. If we hover over a column in Raw Orders, a small arrow will appear. Clicking this shows us visually where that column was used to generate a new column in a new downstream table. We can also explore the relationships of columns in a more tabular format. To show this, let's click on Raw Orders in the graph to open up the side panel. In the Columns section, hover over Customer ID. You'll see a View Lineage option appear. A dialog opens showing you the column lineage. You can toggle between upstream lineage and downstream lineage. For now, switch to downstream lineage. You'll see that Customer ID flows from raw orders into clean orders and then all the way through to Orders Summary. Notice the distance column. A distance of 1 means the column appears in an object that was created directly from the current one, In this case, that would be cleaned orders. A distance of 2 means it passed through one intermediate object to get there, that's orders summary. This is handy when you're working with a deeper pipeline and want to understand how far a column has traveled. Okay, so that's the mechanics of navigating the lineage graph. Now let's talk about why you'd actually use this in practice. I'd like to cover 2 major use cases, and the first is monitoring. Imagine someone on your team comes to you and says the numbers in the orders summary table look off. Without Lineage, you could potentially have to dig through query history, check DDL statements, and mentally piece together where that table came from. With Lineage, you can open up the graph, start at the orders summary table, and within seconds, you can see exactly which objects fed into it and the SQL that created each one. The flip side is impact analysis. Say you're planning to change the structure of raw orders. Maybe you want to rename a column or change a data type. Before you make that change, you can open up the lineage graph and expand downstream to see everything that depends on it. In this case, clean orders and orders summary would both be affected. The second major use case for data lineage is data compliance. This allows us to easily track sensitive data. Let's head back to our workspace. Here we're creating a tag called PII, short for personally identifiable information. We then apply that tag to the customer ID column in raw orders, marking it as an identifier. Now go back to the lineage graph and click on raw orders. In the side panel, find customer ID in the columns list. You'll see a small tag icon next to it. Hover over it and you can see the PII tag applied with the value identifier. If it's not there yet, wait a minute or so and it should come through. Now hover over customer ID and click View Lineage, then switch to Downstream Lineage. Here's where it gets interesting. Snowflake can detect that customer ID flows downstream into cleaned orders and orders summary, but those columns don't yet have the PII tag applied. What you'll see is a banner alerting you to this, and the tags column will highlight the missing tags with a dashed border. You can then hit Review and Apply, confirm the changes, and Snowflake will propagate the PII tag to the downstream columns in one go. Now, related to compliance, if you also have masking policies attached to those tags, the lineage view will surface any masking policy errors. For example, if a column ends up with 2 conflicting policies assigned to it. Okay, and to wrap up, there are a couple of things worth knowing about what Lineage does and doesn't cover. First, only table-like objects participate in Lineage. Specifically, that covers this list of objects. Regular database objects like sequences or file formats don't have a Lineage tab. Second, Lineage captures 2 kinds of relationships. The first is data movement, when data is actually copied or materialized from one object into another. That's what we've created in these examples using the createTableAsSelect construct. What we're looking at here is the list of operations that create data movement lineage. The second type of relationship data lineage tracks is object dependencies. This is when an object references another without materializing data. A view is a classic example. As we know, a view doesn't copy data, it just references the underlying table, but Snowflake still tracks that dependency. Third and finally, a quick note on access. To see the Lineage tab, your role needs the View Lineage privilege on the account, plus at least one privilege such as Select or References on the objects you want to evaluate, and usage on their database and schema. View Lineage is granted to public by default, so everyone has it out of the box, but your organization can restrict it to specific roles by revoking it from public. And if you want a role to navigate the full lineage graph, regardless of the object privileges, you can grant Resolve All on the account, though View Lineage is still required alongside it. Okay, to wrap up, I'm going to drop the lesson database. If you'd like to continue playing around with these statements, feel free to keep it active.